Hello and welcome to this free immigration help YouTube channel. In this channel you will find out different things related to immigrating into the United States, the proper process, filing different forms, different petitions, and different waivers. Now, I am not a licensed attorney or a certified or licensed immigration practitioner in any way. I just know all of this information from my personal experience and experience of other people who I helped and worked with. Now, in this particular video, I will show you how to properly file an application for asylum into the United States. Another way of calling it is also the withholding of removal, and that's one of the important things to keep in mind whenever it comes to this application for asylum, because as it says, literally withholding of removal, you are applying for the status in which you can legally um, be in the United States without being deported, even though you don't actually have any legal status, if that makes sense. So you don't have any legal status in the United States, but you are here legally. That's one of the main goals why I decided to start this channel. I wanted to help people who actually want to live in the United States, to work in the United States, to make it the right way, and who want to make it right way. All of this tools are available, and it's all doable if you want to put your time and effort into it. So let's get into it. Now, here I have United States Citizenship and Immigration Services website. This is their official website, and it is USCIS.gov. And this is the main website that you will be using for pretty much throughout your whole immigration process, starting, like in this case, in this particular video, from filing the asylum application and then filing the employment authorization, application for employment authorization, then filing for your green card, filing for your US citizenship. All of these things are going to be done with the help of this website. So it is very important. Put it in the notes, save it in your browser, because we will be pretty much working with this over here. So let's get straight into it. As you can see, there are certain things that you can file online, and there are you can check your case status and all of these things. It's pretty good. But whenever it comes to filing for asylum, we are not actually filing it online. You have to file it by mail. So the first thing we need to do is we need to locate that proper application. So let's find it. We're going to forms, and as you can see, all of the forms that you can file, there are quite a lot of them. They're all in here. And here we have, it's I-589. It's called Application for Asylum and for Withholding of Removal. Now, this is the application that we need. Let's go into it. And on this page, you have pretty much everything you need to file this application. There is this form that we are going to download, and there are also instructions for that application, which we definitely need to download as well. Now, the application for asylum and for withholding of removal is pretty detailed, as you would think. It is 12 pages total, and there are a lot of information that you need to fill in here, and you do have to fill out this application for yourself and your spouse, if you're applying with the spouse. If you have children over the age of 21, you definitely need to fill out for all of them as well. At least that was the case about 2 years ago, but let's check. The last revision is actually 17, which is 2 years ago, so it should still be the case. But if you go through it carefully, whenever it comes to putting in a child, let's see. This is the You can see here in part two information about your spouse and children. Um, let's see. Yeah, attach a photograph. Mm. If in the US, is this child to be included in this application? So it asks you if you want to, petition for your child as well, which obviously you will want to do that. So obviously all your children will be filled out in these pages, and you can see there is from 1 to 21 for the first child, 1 to 21 for the second child, and for the third child. And then of course, if you do have more than 3 children, you can get additional pages printed out. You will see in the back of this application. Um, so be prepared. It will be asking you a lot of different questions, from the addresses, about your background. So all of this information, the port of entry into the United States, all of these questions will be asked. So whenever you are sitting down to prepare this application, make sure that you have all of your documents in front of you. Your passport, um, all your maybe even write down all of your addresses up to the past, because you can see here, this is the information about your background in the part A3. This is the page number 4, and your addresses. Let's see, during the last five years, all of the addresses that you lived in, all of the schools that you went to, all of your employment, your mother, your father, all your siblings. So basically, they want to find out as much information about you. This is the first part of is the part A of the application. Now, whenever it comes to the part B of the application, this is more of, I would say, one of those main decision making parts in the application. Here you have to be very careful. You have to write very legibly, because you cannot fill out this application on the computer. You have to print it out, and then some of the parts of this application you can complete on the computer. As you can see, for example, in this grayed out fields, you can type in on the computer and then print it out. But honestly, I would recommend just printing out the application and filling it out by hand yourself, very nicely, very clearly, with with a blue pen, and making sure that everything is very legible, because different people have different handwritings. So you will see in the part B there are this big blank spaces. Now, this big blank spaces, this is where you're going to be describing your story. Why are you claiming the asylum? Now, let me talk to you a little bit about the status of asylum. Um, Especially these days, there's a lot of confusion out there. A lot of people confuse asylum with a refugee, and there is actually a very, very big difference between the two. Now, refugees, the status of refugee, they those people are also persecuted. They're also running away from something, but they are claiming that status from outside of the United States. Whenever you're claiming that you cannot go back, here you see back, you cannot go back to your country because you're being persecuted, you are claiming it from the within United States. And this is what asylum is. You come to the United States first, you are on the territory of the United States, and then you claim the status of being persecuted. And that's what the asylum is. You're not claiming it from outside. And especially today, with all the refugee crisis and all things that are going on the border, there is a lot of confusion that is going on in that aspect. But there's a clear distinction. Whenever you are claiming asylum, you are already in the United States. And here are a few important things to keep in mind whenever it comes to the asylum. Um, it is preferable that you are claiming asylum while you are legally in the United States. So what it means is that if you came into the United States with a visa, you entered the United States legally, you have been in the United States legally, and then you applied for asylum because you're afraid of that persecution in your home country or whatever. You cannot return back to your home country because of that persecution. Um, that is very important because if you are here illegally, if you came into the United States illegally, or if you came here legally with a visa and your visa expired and now you're here illegally and you file for the asylum, you can still do it. But your chances of actually getting the asylum now are much less. And there is another very important thing whenever it comes to filing for an asylum. Um, it's the timeliness. You want to file for asylum as soon as you come into the United States. If your plans are to file for an asylum, if you are being persecuted, you want to do that as soon as possible. You don't want to wait. I have personally seen people who come into the United States, they extend their visas. They are here legally, but they extend their visas for 6 months, for a year, and they stay here for a few years, and then they file for asylum. And just thinking about it, it just shows, it just doesn't make any sense. If you are afraid of going back to your home country, if you are being persecuted, then why are you not doing it right away? Why do you have to wait and see? Of course, there are certain circumstances, there are always different circumstances, different situations in which, it might go this way, but not that way. But nevertheless, it is preferable that you file your asylum application within the first 6 months after coming in to the United States. It's gonna be much easier to get asylum compared to if you file after the 6 months period. And this is a very important thing to keep in mind. Okay, so let's go further a little bit on the application now. Like I said here, for example, first question: have you, your family, or close friends or colleagues ever experienced harm or mistreatment or threats in the past by anyone? And obviously you're claiming asylum, so you should be persecuted, because if you don't experience any harm, if you're not scared to go back to your country, if you're not being persecuted based on political beliefs, based on religion, based on belonging to a certain group, for example LGBT or whatever it is, uh, then of course you don't qualify for the asylum. That's the main um, key to being to qualifying for the status, is that you are afraid for your life and you don't want to go back to your home country because you're scared of that persecution. You're scared of harm, you're scared of danger, and that's what they're asking in this. So if you are answering no to all of these questions, really ask yourself a question: do you think you qualify for asylum? Maybe you don't. Maybe you just got confused with something. Maybe this is not for you. Because this is how it's gonna go. This is what they're gonna ask you on the interview. This is what you're gonna write your statement about, and we're gonna talk about this a little later. So with this blank fields now, you want to make sure that you are putting in the detail. Okay, it's very important to write these things detailed. And like I said, there will be a separate statement that you will have to write, which is going to be a completely separate description of your story of why you're being persecuted. And it is an important part of this application. You do need to submit it with your application. And of course, this parts, it should be corresponding to that statement. I mean, it should make sense, really. But make sure that they're just as detailed as in the statement, not just, have you ever experienced harm and mistreatment or threats in the past, and then you say yes, and then you say over here, yes, I have. back in the day something happened, and that's it. It's very important to be detailed, and of course I don't have to mention that it has to be truthful, obviously. And you see the next question: do you fear harm or mistreatment if you return to your home country? Now, that's another important question. Just because you have experienced, harm and mistreatment in the past, it doesn't mean that you still fear to return to your home country, because maybe something changed, maybe there was a revolution, maybe there was a war, and things are now different. No, that fear, it still has to be there. That harm, that potential danger, it still has to be there. And that's why they are asking this question. And again, you should be very detailed here. It's very, very important. Um, then they have, some background information. If you were ever arrested, if you were ever, participating in a certain groups, any terrorist groups, if you're, any political parties, civil patrols, guerrilla organizations, of course, they need to know all of that. And of course, here, if you just say no, then obviously you don't need to explain. But that brings me to one very, very important point that I don't want to miss here, is that you need to make sure that you are not leaving anything blank. Not a single field anywhere on the application should be left blank. If it's not applicable, then you have to write, if you don't have any siblings, don't leave it blank. Put NA, which is not applicable. Here, not applicable. Here, not applicable. It is very, very important, because I have seen 3 cases where there was just a few things that were left blank and the application was returned just because of that. Obviously, if it's returned to you, it's really not a big deal, because they actually attached. It's not like it's, everything is in place, everything is still in order the way you put it. They do attach the detailed instructions of why they are returning your application, so you will know what maybe you missed something, maybe a document is missing. It's not a big deal, because all you have to do is just fix the things that they're asking you to fix and then send back. But nevertheless, it's, a week, maybe 2 weeks lost. Okay, so make sure that you are, just because of that silly reason, that you didn't put not applicable in that field, you don't want this to be returned. And that's it. After you're done with all of this, part of the statement, all of this information, you go to the signature page. Obviously, you sign it. If someone helped you to prepare this form, obviously they have to, fill up that information as well. And then you have a few supplement forms that, like I said, if you have more than one child, that's the form that you can attach. And if you need any other information here from your statement, for example, you can put it in here as well. Okay, so this is the application. Now, I kind of went through pretty quick with it. So if you have any questions, definitely let me know in the comments below, and I will see if I can help you, filling it out. But you can also follow the instructions, which honestly you should, on filling out the application, because it goes part by part, what you need to fill out and how you need to fill out, information about you, information about your spouse and child. Definitely go and make sure that, you follow the instruction, because they actually give you detailed, if you are including any unmarried children under 21 years of age in your application, submit 3 copies of each child's birth certificate. You see, things like this you just wouldn't know unless you read it. So this whole instruction pamphlet is not just something that you can skip. You definitely need to read it very, very well. And then let's see. We have once we're done, probably I should talk about the documents that need to accompany your application. Now, let's see. The very first, the most important thing I would say of the whole application is that statement. Now, the statement is your own statement. You write it yourself. You describe in that statement who you are. You introduce yourself. You put all your personal information in there, where you're born, what nationality are you, what religion are you, how old are you, all of those things. And you describe your story. Start from the very, very beginning. Go in as many details as possible, because all of these details are important. Be as truthful as you can in the statement is extremely important as well. And statement, it can be about 2-3 pages long. I would not recommend writing anything that is less. um, I would honestly recommend to do between 3 and 4 pages at least. 3 and 4 pages statement. That is the statement with with the details, with a good chronological order of all of the details. Very important. Now I recommend typing it up on the computer, printing it out, and then signing it, so that an immigration officer, so that they don't have to go through it, you know through your handwriting, because sometimes it can be unclear and you don't want to bother immigration officer with that. Make sure it's typed up on the computer. Just print it out, date it, sign it. So the things to keep in mind whenever it comes to statement, I will probably do another video, separate video, on writing a proper statement. And if you do have questions about writing a statement, definitely let me know in the comments below. Because like I said, it's one of the most important things that is out there. Whenever you are invited for an interview with an immigration officer, for your asylum, which is a very, very important interview, which is one of the next steps after you submit the application, your immigration officer will have questions prepared based on your statement. So if you don't put certain details into the statement, you might not have a chance to share those details with your immigration officer. And like I said, the details are very, very important. This is one of the things that, shows the truthfulness of your, of what you're saying. Because everyone can say, yes, I'm scared to go back to my country because someone is persecuting me. But, the person who did not experience something like that, they just not going to have those details. So it's very important. Make sure your statement is as detailed as possible. The next thing, of course, they're just very basic things that you will have to attach to your application. And let me see if I can find a list here of what you need to submit. Let's see. Here it is. Required documents. It's on the page 7. Required documents and required number of copies that you must submit. So you're not submitting just one copy of the application. Very important. Keep in mind. So there is a completed, signed, original, and one copy of your completed application. Form I-589. And the original and one copy of any supplementary sheets and supplementary statements. So you're not just submitting one original, you're also submitting one copy. Okay? If you choose to submit additional supporting materials, see blah, 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 you must include 2 copies of each document. You should make and keep an additional copy of the completed application for your own record. So basically, whenever you're done with everything, you need to go and make copies, and make 2 copies of everything, and keep a copy, obviously, of the application that you're submitting, and then you're sending one original, and then you're sending one copy, and then all of your documents that you're sending, you're submitting 2 copies of those documents. So everything is in 2. Only with the application, you send the original. But with documents, obviously, you don't send the original because, the immigration services, they don't return your documents. So you need to keep the originals. And of course, probably should go without me saying, you should bring those originals for your interview with the immigration officer. So an additional copy of your completed application with supplement statements for each family member. So if you have additional family members, you're submitting additional copy of your completed application with the supplementary statement for each family member listed in Part A. So if you have a spouse, you're submitting additional copy. If you have a child, you're submitting an additional copy. Very important with all those copies. 2 copies of primary or secondary evidence. Okay, now the evidence, whenever it comes to evidence, um, it says here, relationship, basically, such as, okay, so let's stop a little bit on the evidence. Now, there are a few different types of evidence here. There's evidence that is evidence for your identity, which you definitely should provide. If you have a spouse, definitely marriage certificate, your birth certificate, your passport, your high school diploma, whatever you have that shows your identity, right? That is the evidence for your identity, basically. Um, even the termination of marriage, if there is, a thing like that, you show that. So they want to make sure that it's very detailed. Also, there is also the evidence that corroborates, that supports your claims for the asylum. So, does your story has some sort of evidence? Now, if you have been persecuted, if something happened, maybe you belong to a certain group, and something happened, some, violent act happened towards that group, is there evidence for it? There can be police reports, police statements, prosecutor reports, prosecutor statements. It can be news articles, any articles on the internet that are from legit sources. All of these things, they are evidence that shows towards what you're saying. So definitely all of that you have to print out, you have to prepare, and you have to include into your statement, into your case, because you are preparing a case, and you wanted as much evidence as possible to show that what you're saying is truth. And then you have a one passport style photo for yourself and each family member, 2 copies of all passports, of all other travel documents, and if you have other identification documents, also include those. Now, whenever it comes to copies, documents filed with this application should be photocopies. If you choose to send an original document, USCIS may keep the original document for its records. So, like I said, they don't return the original, so don't send the original documents. And then whenever it comes to translations, obviously, if you're claiming, you're claiming the asylum from another country, maybe not English speaking. So you have to keep in mind that some of the things you will have to translate. Now, if it's a huge newspaper article, for example, it can be pretty costly to translate. But you can hire someone to translate just one paragraph that is relevant to you. Just make sure you highlight it, and you specify specifically in the translation which article, which part of the article it is translating, because that's really all they need. Immigration officers, they don't have all day to go through all of these huge newspaper articles just to find relevant information anyway. So it's better that way. Whenever it comes to translations, just a quick tip for you guys. It does not have to be a certified translation. Well, here's the thing. It has to be a certified translation, but it does not have to be an official professional translator or whatever who translated it. Now, let's say if you're translating something from Russian to English, and maybe you translated it yourself. If both Russian and English very well, you can translate it yourself, and then you can ask a friend of yours who also speaks Russian and English to take a look at that translation, make sure that it's correct, and then certify his name on there. And then basically what you do is you go with your friend to the notary, and then the notary certifies the signature of your friend. So the translation itself is certified, but it's really nothing special in that procedure, because I've seen personally people spending hundreds of dollars on the professional translator, and it honestly is just not fair, because really anybody can certify the translation for you. Whoever speaks 2 languages, they can certify the translation for you, as long as they put their signature in front of the notary. Now, by immigration laws, you don't need that stuff to be notarized, but I do recommend, to notarize. It doesn't cost a lot. In some places, it just costs about $1. In some places, you can find it for free. So notarize it. It really is much better to have it notarized than not. Um, let's see. And honestly, that's really it. Once you are done with all of that, you just put it all nicely together, all of the copies. Don't staple them. It's very important. You can put the paper clip on all of the parts of the application. Make sure to put the pictures on the very top corner under the paper clip on top of each application. It's much helpful. For example, if your whole family filing for the asylum, it will be much easier for the immigration officer to understand who is who as soon as they see the picture of a mother, the picture of a father, the picture of the kids. It just creates that layout for them to work with, and you want to do that. You want to make it easier for the immigration officer to work with. Okay. Now, whenever it comes to the fee, there is no fee for filing the application. It's completely free. So I know there are out there. There are a lot of services. There are a lot of fake websites that you can file the application for the asylum. Don't go through them. They charge you a fee for that application. There is no fee for filing an application for asylum. Now, you can do it with an attorney, and but honestly, I wouldn't recommend doing it with an attorney because, first of all, attorneys, their work is in court. Um, they're not very proficient with these things whenever it comes to filing this sort of applications, and really, this is your story. So you can't rely on an attorney to express your own story. This is your story of the persecution, not attorneys. Now, they can guide you through writing that, but again, I have seen personally a lot of horror stories to where people filed this application with an attorney, and you know honestly, in my own experience, I've seen most of the attorneys, immigration attorneys, they are not very good people. They take a lot of money and then they really just try to make more money out of you. So in this particular stage of the process, you really do not need an attorney. So educate yourself as much as possible. Read through several times through this thing, and just be truthful, be honest with your statement, write as good of a story. If you have any questions, you can you know write on here on this video, and I'm sure there are other people who can recommend you who are watching this video as well, who did it. And if I can help you with something, I'll definitely will. Now, another thing with the application is obviously where to file it. Now, if you want to know where to file it, you can find it right here. They have different places. It's not just everywhere. Depending from which state you are filing, you should use that particular service. Okay. Now, if you are, for example, in Florida, you're filing to Texas Service Center. Very, very important. Now, if you are, let's say, in Minnesota, you're filing to Nebraska. If you are in Maine, Vermont. So you see, they have 4 different big, very, very, very big service centers, and that's where you file. Now, another very important thing that I want to mention, that I don't think that they are mentioning it here. Do not send your application form with anything but USPS. Just a regular priority, not express, nothing, whatever. It can be priority, but don't ask for a certified anything or a signature, nothing like that, because you are sending it to a PO box. And I have seen people at USPS who don't know, and that they say that yes, it's okay to request a signature. Nobody is gonna sign it in the PO box. They will send it back to you. So make sure that you are not, especially if you're sending with UPS and FedEx, those guys, that's a private shipping company. Don't do that. it's very important. Send it with USPS. And if you want to send it a bit faster, you can send it with priority. But don't send it with express. Just USPS, priority. That's what I always send it with and never had a problem. It's just the most reliable one. They have those big priority envelopes, and this is the best way to go. Okay, so again, don't send it with, for example, if you want to put it in an envelope with like a stamp, don't do that as well because it can be pretty bulky, pretty heavy. You don't know how many stamps to put. So make sure you actually go to the USPS and put it in that big envelope, the priority envelope, and let them send it themselves because they know how much stamps they need to put on. All right, that's really it. Whenever it comes to filing the application for the asylum, you send it in. Now, if you get the receipt back, which hopefully you will, if you won't, then you're gonna get back the whole application that you sent. And if you do, again, like I said, it's really not that big of a deal because all you have to do is just follow the instructions that they attach of what needs to be fixed, what needs to be corrected, what needs to be added, and then send it again. No big deal. Don't be scared about it. But if they accept the application, they will send you the receipt with the receipt number, which you will be able to go on here into the official USCIS website and check your case status with that receipt number right here. After that, it depends really how, because every time is really different. 10 years ago, it was about 2 weeks that they would call for an asylum interview. Later, it was about 2-3 years. And now I heard that now they're calling much faster for that asylum interview. They might call you for the biometrics somewhere in between, either before the asylum interview or after, depending on how soon they schedule the interview. But if it's not any sooner than like 2-3 weeks, then you will probably get your biometrics appointment. And biometrics is basically where you go to your local USCIS application center and you give your fingerprints and they take a picture of you. And this is what biometrics is. And the asylum interview, this is basically the main thing that determines if you're going to be granted asylum or not. This is where the immigration officer asks you regarding, why you're claiming asylum, why you're afraid to go home. They will be asking you very, very personal, very, very detailed questions. So be prepared for that. And you will be doing it in your local asylum office. Now, you might have to travel a little bit for it. It depends which city you live. For example, in Florida, back 10 years ago, they only had one in Miami and they only had one in Tampa. So people who lived in between, they had to travel either to Tampa or Miami for those things. And that's really it. And after that, obviously, they will say whether your asylum was granted or whether it was denied. Now, to just go over quickly of what it gives you, that asylum status, basically, after you get your asylum, after a year of having the asylum status, you can apply for a green card. You can become a permanent resident, apply for permanent residency. And as an asylum holder, you are eligible to work in the United States. Also, you are eligible to work in the United States after 180 days of your asylum application pending. So this is what it means. If you submit, today's January 20, and if you submit your asylum application today, and in 10 days, you're going to get your receipt of of your application, that your application was received and accepted. And since that date, since the acceptance date, which can be like a January 30, for example, 180 days after that date, you can apply for employment authorization document, which allows you to work in the United States legally. And I will make another separate video on how to apply for that. It's a pretty simple procedure as well. So make sure to subscribe. If you have any questions, any requests, definitely let me know in the comments below, and I will be happy to address those and do whatever is in demand, whatever is needed, whenever it comes to the immigration. I hope this was helpful for you. If it was, let me know so that I know that I didn't do this for nothing. And like I said, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.